So today is the third week of the Advent. We're anticipating the coming of the baby Jesus again and sharing in all the joy of the Christmas season. The first week we talked a bit about hope and what hope is in life. And we said to one another, have a wabi-sabi Christmas. Do you remember what that means? A wabi-sabi Christmas is the recognition that we're going to do the best we can with what we have. So have a wabi-sabi Christmas. Say it back to me. Nice. So that's just the recognition that, we just want to be blessed even in the midst of the challenges we have. And then last week we talked about peace. Can we find peace in this season? We talked about how we are not the only faith that seeks peace. In fact, our Jewish brothers and sisters say shalom. Our Muslim brothers and sisters say salam. Our Buddhist brothers and sisters say namaste, right? And we say peace. And so I encourage you to leave here because you all go to Costco after you leave here. And I encouraged you to say shalom, salam, namaste, peace. And I have to tell you, I too was waiting in line at Costco. And I had great joy in my heart when I heard somebody say, my pastor said I have to say shalom, salam, namaste, peace. Somebody did it. It was fantastic. I'm sure they knew I was there, but I heard it a few times leaving there. You really do all go there every week. That's amazing to me. Well, so we've done a little wabi-sabi Christmas. We've done a little shalom, salam, namaste. And today we're going to step into the joy of the season, the joy of the season. And guess what? We're not the only tradition that celebrates joy, but our tradition is based in the Bible. And we're going to take a look at 3 different passages that refer to joy. Remember Isaiah? We talked about him last week. He talks about the coming of Jesus. He says, shout aloud and sing for joy, people of Zion, for great is the Holy One of Israel among you. So he was kind of foretelling hundreds of years before Jesus would come what we were going to have something to shout about and to share and joy with. And then I love this text from Romans. If this can be your guiding text for the whole season, thanks be to God, it's this: may the God of hope fill you with all joy and peace as you trust in God, that you may overflow with hope by the power of the Holy Spirit. I just love that text. Great text. And then finally, the reminder of this Christmas story from Luke. An angel of the Lord appeared to them, the shepherds, and the glory of the Lord shone around them, and they were terrified. But the angel said to them, do not be afraid. I bring you good news that will cause great joy for all people. Today in the town of David, a Savior has been born to you. He is Messiah, the Lord. This will be a sign to you. You will find a babe wrapped in cloths and lying in a manger. Oh, great, joyful text. At the center of our understanding of Jesus Christ from the Christian perspective. Now, if this is your first time at the garden or if you've not been here much, we are a group of people that recognize that lots of people come from many different paths. And we believe that as long as those paths are guided by love, then the God of love and grace and mercy will guide you in the right ways. So we don't think we have the market on love. We don't believe that you have to do this in order to experience the love of God. We believe you just need to acknowledge it in whatever tradition you come from. We're using a book this year called The Soul of Christmas, Love It, by a guy named Thomas More. And in his writings, he reminds us that our faith is centered on Jesus. And who is Jesus? Jesus was a man who brought a message and that was rooted in love. He believed in the power of community, and his primary activity in life was to heal and to teach. So for Thomas More, that's really central and most important to his faith. Now, Thomas More was at one time a priest and is still very priestly in his way of being, but he does recognize there are many paths and so much love that we shouldn't limit it to our understanding of love. That God works in ways that we don't understand, that the light of Christ shines in ways that we don't understand, and we need to be open to how the love and light shine into the world. Christmas is a festival, right? It's a festival about the birth of Jesus. And you know, at one time, it was really more like Mardi Gras. It was a raucous occasion. And then this guy named Charles Dickens came along, and he wrote a story that kind of transformed Christmas into more of a community activity where we decorated our homes and we sang carols and we sent out Christmas cards, more of a more family-oriented experience. Moore challenges us to be mindful that the raucous Mardi Gras Christmas, the at-home Christmas, are all parts of our tradition, and they're all very important to all of us. But we must be mindful that when we have our own traditions, it kind of narrows the path. And when we narrow the path, we have to be mindful that there are other ways and other people who come in different ways. Now, with Moore, he also notes that this is a season of lofty joy, but it's also a season of lowliness. We remember in this season, as I said earlier, and as we were trying to acknowledge here at the garden, that just because we're celebrating Jesus' birthday, not everything in this world gets perfect, right? There's still challenges. There's still refugees throughout the world that don't have a place to call home. There are children who do not have enough to eat. There are people who struggle with addiction and estrangement from their family. There are people who are challenged in a variety of different ways and overwhelmed by life, that they bring guns to school. There are people in this world who are challenged. And Moore says, we don't ignore that. We don't ignore that. We not only not ignore it, but we recognize that Jesus did not come into the world in the perfect Christmas play and pageant. He came into the world into a dark and lonely place, and there wasn't room for him. He said, we have to be mindful that all of us have these similar experiences. There's not one of us in this room who at one time or another hasn't been challenged by being left out or not being invited in. We have to remember that as we are mindful of those who are not being invited into different places of this world. And in doing so, we have an opportunity to pray and shine just a little bit of light on the darkness that is part of the world. So for Moore, it's both and. It's a lofty and amazing thing, but it's also a lowly thing. So today we're focusing on the joy of the season with that in mind, that there's a yin and yang and that there's darkness and light. But we're going to step into the joy today, mindful, guess what? We're not the only faith tradition that has joy. Almost all faith traditions experience a sense of joy in one way or another. And that joy arrives in a lot of different ways. The Buddhists have the laughing Buddha, if you've never seen him. He is the most gorgeous thing ever. He weighs a lot. I love that. And he is smiling and laughing. You know who I'm talking about? Sometimes you'll see him and he's covered with children because he loves children and he brings a spirit of love. And he encourages us to have a spirit like of a child. He is the Buddha that, much like our elf, who the elf works with Santa, to kind of keep an eye on us to make sure we've got it going on and we're not doing things wrong. The Buddha functions much the same way. It is said that if you start off the path in a wrong direction, if you go and look to the smiling and laughing face of the Buddha, it will bring you back to where you need to be, much like our elf helps to keep us in line for Santa. In the Muslim tradition, Islamic tradition, there is this guy called Qadar, I think, and he is the green man. And this green man walks the earth, bringing peace and joy to children all over. He brings new life and new beginnings with peace and joy. And you're supposed to look for him. And it's interesting, in the Quran, joy and happiness are very clear and all over the Quran. What's interesting about the Christian faith is we have not found a way to translate happiness and joy in such a way that they're not separate. But in the Quran, it is very separate. But they experience joy. Joy doesn't always get highlighted when we talk about our Muslim brothers and sisters, but it's there, and it's part of it, and they have the green man. Now, we in the Christian faith, we don't have a laughing Buddha. We don't have a green man, but we do have Santa Claus. And Moore says it's time for these adults to get back in line with Santa, boys and girls. So this week, hold us all accountable to get back in line with Santa, because Santa is an absolute, mysterious, amazing gift to all of us. And we adults need to get back on track. First of all, we have Santa, who is like the laughing Buddha, kind of a big guy in a red suit. He has a mantra, and it is ho, ho, ho. That's right. For more, he's also kind of a shaman because he brings with him bells. And these bells kind of leave a little bit of goodness everywhere they go. And guess what? And just like a bell keeps ringing, like far beyond us hearing it, that bell is still ringing right now. That drum is still drumming right now. That's how the shaman Santa works. He brings that kind of joy everywhere he goes. Now, just like Jesus, who remember we said was a teacher and a healer, Jesus was welcomed into homes, wasn't he? He was welcomed into homes, and in those homes, he left the good news, or he left gifts of the good news. Well, Santa, we invite him into our homes as well, and we invite him to share his generosity by offering him hospitality. He leaves good gifts with us as well. Isn't that fascinating? So Moore says it's time for us adults to get back with the magic of the season. It's time for us to be reminded that there is magic and mystery in this season, and unless we start looking for it, we're going to work it right on out of the season. So I want to encourage you all to go home, write a note to Santa, ask for what you want. It doesn't have to be a 2019 new car, Santa, but a car, whatever. Write down what you want and share in the mystery of the experience in a childlike kind of way. Eat some cookies. Listen for magical reindeer. Listen for the magic of the season, and you will find it. That's exactly what Moore says. As adults, we need to be mindful of this magic that overcomes the darkness. We don't only find it in Santa, but do you know what? We find it elsewhere too. We have these angels who also have a mantra. Don't be afraid, we bring good news. We have angels who sing in the sky still to this day. All we have to do is listen and we'll hear them. We have this magic thing in our culture and tradition today called Christmas carols. And whether you open your mouth and sing them or not, they play in your head, so you might as well be singing them. Do you know what I mean? I know you may be one of those people who are kind of over it, but I'm not. You are singing Christmas carols even when you're not opening your mouth. Today when we heard a little pa-rum-pa-pum-pum, how many of you were pa-rum-pa-pum-pumming right there? That's magic. Like, how does that happen? How does it happen that when we hear that, we think that, and it changes us? That's magic. That's part of the magic of the season. We have to remember that the magic of the season is found in the sky in these amazing things called stars. Because there are stars that can overcome the darkness of the sky, and those stars shine down on this world, and we have to remember that those stars can shine into our lives as well. Perhaps the greatest thing for us to remember in this Christmas season is that God gave us the greatest gift, not in a big, outrageous way, but in the form of a tiny baby, a tiny, helpless baby, a tiny, helpless baby put into our arms to be cared for. And magically, that baby has and continues to transform this world with healing, teaching, grace, and love. Oh, yes, my friends, there is mystery and magic in the season, and unless we step into it, we're gonna miss it. I want you to develop your own mantras. Maybe it's not have a wabi-sabi Christmas or shalom, salam, namaste. It may not be ho, ho, ho. But you too can develop some thoughts that will move you to such the place where once again you hear carols, you see stars, and you experience a light that can overcome the darkness. Friends, if we can find a way to continually detach from the materialistic side of this world, how different life might look. If we believed in mystery once again, how different life might look. I have this fantasy that perhaps if we stopped looking so narrowly at our own paths and we opened ourselves to these other paths, that maybe during Christmas perhaps we could gather with the Buddha and the Green Man and Santa and Jesus and the stars and the light and the love, and we could all gather in one place and we could learn from one another's mysterious, mystical lives and traditions, and together create a new tradition, a new language that brings forth light and love that overcomes darkness. Wouldn't that be great? Wouldn't it be great if we could somehow gather together and find a common love language, find a common way to have a childlike spirit and transform this world, not with our differences, but with our likeness and desire for love and light? This past week, as part of the chaplaincy program I'm involved in, you have to share story theology. A story theology is how God showed up, so theology is the study of God. So how God showed up in my life in a way that surprised me or that was present. And I love the story that a friend shared, and I've asked her permission to share it with all of you. She shared a story about how when she was in college, she went on a trip of Europe. And she had been to London before, so they had a day off. This music group had a day off. And she had 3 friends who asked her to bring them throughout the city of London. And she agreed to do that because she knew London pretty well and decided what she needed to do was to take them to Piccadilly. If you've ever been to Piccadilly Circus, that's a good place to go to experience London. So she took them there, and they were in the midst of the hustle and the bustle. You've been there before. There are all kinds of souvenir shops. There's places you can buy scarves and all kinds of things. There are department stores. It's just this flurry of activity. Not only that, but you're surrounded by people who are making their way to work or wherever it is that they're going. And it's a great experience. She was taking her friends around when she noticed this guy came out of this little narrow passageway. He was in a blue suit, and he had a case with him. And after he came out of there, she kind of followed behind him, and she said, "Carl, I wonder what's down there. I wonder if we should head down there." He turned around and he said, "Absolutely, you need to head down there." This guy sending these 4 women down this dark alley. So she did exactly what she did. She took her friends down there, and they did. They went down a very dark, narrow alley, and she said it was almost like not big enough to get through. And then it ended up getting wider and wider and wider until they were in a courtyard. And when they made it into the courtyard, she said it was like this other place. It's like they had totally left behind this hustle and bustle of the Piccadilly Circus and just found this magical little place. There were about 3 shops there. She said there were about 6 people around, and there were 3 shops and a cafe. And the cafe, she noticed right away, had little tables with just 2 seats at them and beautiful flowers on each table. She said there was a toy store as well, and the toy store said no batteries necessary, and they sold all cloth and wood toys. Then she said there was a chocolate shop as well. She said it was interesting. There were about 6 people milling about, and they were incredibly friendly and welcomed all of them, and it was a pretty neat experience. They went around, went to the toy shop, and they looked around at the cafe. It was too early for lunch, and then they made their way to the chocolate shop, where the owner welcomed them in and then gave them the best chocolate they had ever eaten in their whole lives. She said, and he kept giving us sample after sample, and we weren't leaving because it was amazing. She said then he turned and he gave them something she had never experienced before, candied rose petals. Candied rose petals, and they tasted them as well, and they thought, these are fantastic. So each of the girls bought a little bit of chocolate. They made their way out of the shop, and then they made their way back down the alley. When they got out of the alley, there was a woman coming by who did the exact same thing that my friend had done. She said, "I wonder what's down that alley." My friend said, "You need to get down there. It's an amazing place." The woman went down the alley, and these women started walking, or these kids, college kids, started walking away, and they got about 20 feet away from the alleyway when one decided, I got to go back and get more of that chocolate. I got to get more of that chocolate. So she then turned around, and they went to make their way back to the alley, and they couldn't find it. They couldn't find the alleyway. They looked and searched, she said, for all of about 2 hours. And they just finally determined that perhaps they had made it to Diagon Alley. It's a Harry Potter thing. And it wasn't meant to be. And they made their way back to the hotel. To this day, those girls still talk about that experience, still recount the experience in the same way, and still are not quite sure what happened that day. But they think about it and the mystery and the magic of it and are overwhelmed with the goodness of the experience. Perhaps, my friends, the true joy of this Christmas season is finding ways to connect with the mystery and magic. To not try to figure it all out immediately, but to just believe, in fact, that there's magic in the world. To remember your mantras of peace and wabi-sabi and ho-ho-ho. To listen for the bells of Santa, mindful of the magic in the air. And to be mindful that we all get off track every now and then. And if we turn our faces towards the Buddha, towards the elf, towards Santa, we can get back to where we're going. It's mystery and it's magical. Above all, let's not forget the rest of this Christmas season to go down the alleyways and to take different roads to Christmas where we'll find absolute magic. How disappointing it would be to find that we were so busy preparing for that magical day of Christmas that we missed the magic and joy in this very moment. I preached a little bit earlier about a magical circle that had different people in it from different faith traditions.